Lance Zierlein hinted at his mock draft yesterday that it was going to fire up the city. As soon as he said that, I knew what direction he was going in. But it has been unveiled by NFL.com. Lance Zierlein 3.0 is out. And Lance makes it very clear that he's drafting based on what he thinks the teams will do. And he also has trades here. So that's something to keep in mind as well. He has Carolina going with Bryce Young at number 1. So the whole C.J. Stroud thing, smokescreen, they select what many people think is the best quarterback in this draft. Bryce Young goes number 1 to Carolina, and Lance Zierlein 3.0. The Houston Texans with a bit of a curveball at number 2. They go, look, and you know what my dream scenario is? I would love to go defensive end and then quarterback, trade down, defensive end quarterback, some way. I would take Will Anderson at number 2. Lance Zierlein has the Houston Texans at number 2, selecting defensive end Tyree Wilson from
At
Texas
2?
Tech. That's the reaction of everybody who looked at Lance Zierlein's mock draft. I personally love the idea of Will Anderson going number 2, to be completely honest with you. If Bryce goes number 1 to Carolina, I'm totally okay taking Will Anderson at number 2. So I love the philosophy here. Don't know if I love Tyree Wilson ahead of Will Anderson. But Lance says if the Texans miss out on Young, they might not be a lock to take Stroud with needs along the defensive front and 2023 first-round picks. The choice could be between Wilson and Will Anderson. So some thought here that the Texans could go defensive end if their quarterback is off the board, their quarterback being Bryce Young. He was taken number 1 by Carolina. The Texans go defense with Tyree Wilson at number 2. I'm okay going defensive end at number 2. I'm not okay going Tyree Wilson at number 2 over Will Anderson.
Absolutely agree with that. I mean, if you're not going to go quarterback, in my opinion, it has to be Will Anderson.
Like a lot of people call Will Anderson the best player available.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think Will Anderson and Jalen Carter are the. In fact, it's
Once
not
Carter
unanimous.
had the off the field stuff too, that discussion changed and it was just Will Anderson.
Now they still have him high on the big boards because that just evaluates talent. But yes, his stock is going to plummet to some extent because of all the red flags and off the field issues. But many people think that the best 2 pro prospects in this draft are Will Anderson and Jalen Carter.
Mm-hmm.
So I love the idea of going BPA. I'm a best player available kind of guy, even if it means it's a defensive end over a quarterback. So the Texans take Will Anderson at number 2 because they don't love C.J. Stroud. Cool. I'm all right with that. I won't be mad whenever I talk about what the Houston Texans are doing in the draft. But Tyree Wilson's only the first curveball for the Houston Texans in this draft. Will Anderson's off the board at number 3 to Arizona. He projects a trade with the Ravens and the Colts, where the Colts ultimately get Lamar Jackson, and the Ravens get the 4th pick, and the Ravens select C.J. Stroud, the quarterback from Ohio State. He has Jalen Carter doesn't slip very far in Lance's mock. He goes number 5 to Seattle, and then Detroit takes Devin Witherspoon, the corner from Illinois. At pick number 7, the Las Vegas Raiders are on the clock, and the Houston Texans come calling. And the Houston Texans trade back into the top 10. They trade their 12th pick plus future draft capital for the number 7th pick of the NFL draft. And the Houston Texans select Will Levis, the quarterback out of Kentucky. Lance is getting a lot of hate for this. He's getting a lot of grief for this. I sent Lance a tweet earlier today. I said, Lance, don't be so hard on yourself. I personally love this mock draft. I do love this. I would go Will Anderson at number 2 and not Tyree Wilson. But if the Texans were to leave this draft, Will Anderson and Will Levis, I would be over the moon. I'm
just curious what the other draft capital would be that you'd have to give up.
He says an additional capital in 2024, so he doesn't draw specifics. What do you think it would be to move up 5 spots in the first round? Is it the Browns first?
It's the Browns pick, in my opinion.
That's a lot to move up 5 spots.
It is, but I believe that's what it is.
But
in my opinion,
I think it gets it done.
I don't think it is a lot if you believe that trade is getting you a franchise quarterback. Then he's worth that first.
See, now, and the way Lance described it this morning, he said, I don't love it personally. I don't think it's the way they should go. But he said it makes a lot of sense for the Bobby Slowick offense and the style of quarterback that they like to execute it the way they want to do things, that it would be the right fit for the system and the coaching staff.
Yeah. Now,
and you've said that.
I have. You should have been listening to the Killer Bees for the last 3 months because we've been talking about this very thing. Will Levis last year played for a terrible offensive coordinator, the Scagnarelli guy, who actually came from San Francisco. He came from San Francisco, was like a position coach there. I want to say a quarterback coach, and he took over for Liam Cohen. Will Levis under Liam Cohen in 2021 at Kentucky looked amazing. I think if Will Levis came out in 2021, we wouldn't be having these conversations of, is Will Levis raw? Does Will Levis need a developmental year? All of this stuff. And then in 2022, he took a step backwards. Let's call it what it is. Like, I'm not going to be a homer about Will Levis. He was not as good in 2022 as he was in 2021, and he didn't have as productive a year in 22 as the other quarterbacks, well, Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud. He was more productive than Anthony Richardson, but he wasn't as productive as Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud. So you're looking at projectability. What does he look like at the next level? The Texans, scouts, GMs, executives, they've seen what Will Levis looked like in 2021 when he was playing in the Liam Cohen offense. Liam Cohen was the offensive coordinator for the Rams this past year. He was the OC at Kentucky 2 years ago. Very West Coast, Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay type of offense. So Levis has played in that style of offense. Levis is also a big quarterback. Like, he's also a quarterback that has NFL size, whereas Bryce Young, and it doesn't matter because Bryce Young's gone at number 1. Texans never had a chance to take Bryce Young in Lance Zierlein's mock. So I'm a fan of this. A lot of people look at Levis and they already rule out that Levis can be a good quarterback. I really don't understand that because we haven't seen C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson play a single snap in the NFL, yet you have people knowing how good these guys are going to be in the NFL. It amazes me. You look at the history of drafting quarterback at number 2, it is not very good. And if you just look at the top quarterbacks in the NFL currently, in the NFL in the past, and see where they were selected in the NFL draft, a lot of times it's random. So why not go BPA at number 2 and then trade back into the top 10 to take whatever quarterback's there? Maybe it's Levis. Maybe Anthony Richardson is somebody that the Texans love. So you take BPA at 2, you use future draft capital that you got from the Deshaun Watson trade anyways to trade back into the top 10 to select what you think is going to be a franchise quarterback. I like this Lance Zierlein mock.
I knew you would. My big thing is, again, like I've always said, is the powers that be, starting with Nick Caserio, and then as it trickles down to the coaching staff and starts with D'Amico, they just have to have a gut feeling of a guy that they like, and they got to stick to it. And they got to go get him no matter what it takes to make sure they get their guy. Now, that might be difficult because the Carolina trading up might take that guy, and then you're just basically SOL. But I also said they've got to come away from this draft with a quarterback. Now, you hope it's whoever you come away with is going to be your quarterback of the future, but the team's still not that good, so that there's a chance you'll be in the same position next year with a chance to get another one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that could be redundant. Yeah, that's not the smartest way to go about this, but the Cardinals did it. It worked out to some degree with Kyler Murray, and so we go. But I look at this and say they've got to come away with a quarterback, and I really would love them to come away with the quarterback that they feel in their gut is the best guy for them. If this is Will Levis, and that's what Lance said this morning, and I have no reason to doubt Lance and all of his sources and all the work and research that he puts into this, then great. Because I'm not going to be biased and say, because I don't know if I don't know enough about the guy that I'm going to say I don't like him. You obviously hear that the top tier is just 2 guys. But if Will Levis can come back, take the step to the next level where the offense and the coaching staff and everything that he's running is a system that's more conducive to him being successful and he can continue to grow with it, so be it. That's what the team needs. The team doesn't need the most hyped up, highly ranked of all these quarterbacks. You need the quarterback that's going to be the best for you.
Yeah. And look, I listened to a little bit of the bench this morning. I was taking the oldest son to school, and they talked about this. And Lance was very clear. He's like, I don't like Levis as a draft prospect. I think Will Levis is a second-round grade quarterback. He says he's putting himself in the shoes of these general managers and doing what the GMs would think. And he could totally see the Houston Texans going best player available at number 2 and then selecting or then trading back up for the quarterback. He even mentioned earlier today, it could be Levis, could be Anthony Richardson, but he could see the Texans having that philosophy. I've said that philosophy for a long time. I like that philosophy, especially when you don't have a slam dunk quarterback. Because look, I love Bryce Young. Bryce Young's not a guarantee in the NFL, quite frankly, because of his size. And people say, well, if he was 6'3", he'd be a surefire number 1. Cool. He's not. He's not. He's 5'10". Do I think he has a chance to be really good in the NFL? Yes. Does it come with a lot of risk? Yes, it comes with a lot of risk. So if you're Caserio, why not go with who you have number 1 on your board?
That's what I'm saying.
And then take a risky quarterback later in the first round.
Like, the biggest thing to me is have confidence in and knowing who you want and go get him. But when when we're talking about this, all these quarterbacks have question marks. It's not like anybody's a slam dunk. And that's not normally the case. When you have a guy like Trevor Lawrence coming out, he was head and shoulders the number 1 quarterback and the number 1 player in the draft. And no matter what people could nitpick what might be a shortcoming, no one was going to waver over the fact that he was clearly the guy that was going to end up being the guy on the next level. Here, all these guys have question marks, have things that people are picking apart. Some are more fixable than others to some degree. Obviously, the things with Bryce Young are not fixable because for the most part, he's not going to wear lifts and become 6'2" overnight. And it's up for debate as to how much weight he can actually put on and how good that would be for him. But for the other guys, it's going to be about, can you improve your accuracy? Can you improve your ability to do the things that you need to do improvisationally, but also intelligently in the quarterback position and the intangibles? And so it's rare that you have, unlike the year before where you had 3 guys that were going to be the best quarterbacks in the draft, none of them were worthy of being high first-round picks. This year, you've got 3 to 4 guys that are all rumored to be in the top 10 to 12 of the draft, but each one of them have substantial question marks that you could point at and go, that's a reason why I'd be apprehensive taking that guy. But there's no clear cut. So that's why I said you got to be able to decipher, skip all the mock drafts, skip all the other experts' opinions, and believe in your organization, in all the people that you trust, that you have pinpointed the guy that you really want and have to have. If he's there, great. If he's not, then you've got to adjust on the fly and take the best players available.